when Dolores Jordan, 81 years old, was turned away from one of the most luxurious and exclusive stores in Paris because she didn't appear affluent enough in her travel outfit. She never imagined she would recount this humiliating experience to her son. However, a phone call to Michael Jordan triggered a series of events that no one could have predicted. Instead of merely complaining, Michael made a choice that would not only rectify this personal injustice, but also revolutionize the entire industry's perception of dignity and worth. What followed didn't just alter one store, it ignited a global movement that encouraged millions to reconsider the true essence of luxury. The rain threatened to pour from the gray Parisian sky as Dolores Jordan strolled along the broad sidewalk of Avenue Montaigne. Today marked her 81st birthday, and she had decided to indulge herself. After decades of hard work, saving every dollar, and consistently prioritizing her children, she could finally treat herself to something special. She paused in front of a store window and saw her reflection in the glass. Her short black hair was slightly tousled by the wind, and her face bore the signs of a long journey from the United States. She was dressed modestly in black pants, comfortable shoes, and a plain blue sweater. Nothing extravagant, but clean and tidy. The perfect moment to buy herself a birthday gift, she thought softly with a small smile. In front of her stood her destination, Beaulieu, the most exclusive store in Paris, frequented by movie stars, royalty, and billionaires. The storefront sparkled like a gem with spotless windows and golden door handles. Dolores felt a flutter in her stomach. She had saved for this occasion. She didn't desire anything extravagant, just a memento to commemorate her 81st birthday in Paris, perhaps a silk scarf or a pair of gloves. As she approached the entrance, she noticed a tall man in a black suit standing by the door. His name tag read Vincent. He had sleek black hair, a thin mustache, and sharp eyes that scrutinized every passerby. A well-dressed couple approached. The woman wore diamonds around her neck, and the man carried shopping bags from other luxury stores. Vincent opened the door for them with a warm smile and a deep bow. "Welcome to Beaulieu, madame." Dolores reached the door just after the couple entered. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Vincent's smile disappeared. His eyes narrowed as he took in her worn shoes, simple attire, and weary face. Before Dolores could speak, he blocked the entrance with his body. "I'm sorry, madam, but we are closed for a private event today." She blinked in disbelief. "But those people just went inside," she said, pointing at the couple. Vincent's expression hardened. "They are on the special guest list." Through the glass door, Dolores could see people shopping normally inside. Another well-dressed woman approached, and without a word, Vincent simply stepped aside to let her in. "I just wanted to buy a small gift," Dolores explained. "It's my birthday today." Vincent raised an eyebrow, scanning her clothes again. "Perhaps another store would be more suited for your budget. May I suggest the tourist shops near the river?" Dolores felt her face flush. In that moment, she was no longer an 81-year-old woman being rejected by an arrogant doorman. She was a young single mother again, facing prejudice, being judged, and deemed unworthy. Inside the store, a dark-haired employee was watching the scene. Her name tag read Zara. She was new at Beaulieu and had witnessed this happen before. But something about the dignity of the black-haired woman made her stomach twist with shame. "Aren't we supposed to let her in?" Zara whispered to her supervisor. The supervisor quickly shut down the conversation. "Mind your section, Zara. Vincent knows who belongs here and who doesn't." Outside, Dolores straightened her back. She wouldn't cry. She had faced worse challenges than a snobbish doorman. "I understand. Thank you for your time." She turned to leave. Just as she reached the corner, the first drop of rain fell, trailing down her cheek like a tear. Within minutes, the rain was pouring, but she didn't hurry. There was nowhere to run, no appointments, no one waiting for her, just a hotel room and another lonely birthday. Inside Beaulieu, Zara watched the black-haired woman disappear into the rain. She thought about running after her with an umbrella, but fear held her back. Her job at Beaulieu paid her rent and her younger brother's school fees. She couldn't risk it. Vincent returned to his post with a smug smile. "Trying to get in here dressed like that? If we let just anyone shop at Beaulieu, we lose our exclusivity." Zara looked away, focusing on folding a silk scarf that cost more than her monthly salary. The soft music played on, champagne flowed, and the wealthy customers shopped for exclusive merchandise, unaware of what had just happened. But Zara couldn't forget the black-haired woman's face. She wasn't angry, just hurt and disappointed. In her small hotel room, Dolores removed her wet clothes and put on the hotel's thin robe. She hadn't cried when Vincent turned her away. She had been through too much in life. But as she looked out the window, a deep sadness settled in, and that was when she made a decision. She picked up the phone and called Michael Jordan. Little did she know that this phone call would change everything. But for now, alone, a few tears escaped. She looked at her phone. 3 birthday messages from her children waited to be answered. But Dolores wasn't ready to talk yet, not even to Michael. What could she say? That at 81 years old, she still felt like an outsider, like a woman who didn't belong in fancy places. Dolores walked to the window and watched the rain fall over the streets of Chicago. The city lights blurred through her tears. She thought about calling her children but decided against it. Why ruin their day with her trivial problems? She had survived far worse than a difficult moment, one she would eventually laugh about. But tonight, on her birthday, Dolores Jordan allowed herself to feel the sting of rejection. Miles away, in a gleaming office, her son Michael was in a meeting about basketball and investments. He had no idea what had happened to his mother, or that soon he would do something that would inspire millions and change what it meant to be exclusive forever. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight, Dolores Jordan watched the rain and remembered all the doors that had been shut in her face throughout her life, and all the ones she had forced open. Either way, the rain stopped around midnight. Dolores wiped her eyes and decided that was enough. 81 years was too old to cry over something so trivial. She had raised 3 successful children on her own, built multiple careers, and even became a sports advocate in her 60s. A rude doorman couldn't take that away from her. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with Michael's face and the words, "Birthday video call." Dolores took a deep breath and quickly fixed her hair before answering. "Hey, it's my birthday girl." Michael's voice burst through the phone. His face looked tired but happy. Behind him, computer screens displayed new business projects. "Hello, sweetheart," she said, putting on her brightest smile. "Working late as always, but I wouldn't miss your birthday call. How's Chicago treating you? You should see the city lights. It's beautiful. I hit the gym today and had a lovely lunch at that little cafe you recommended. You got yourself something special, right?" It's not every day my mom turns 81. The question hit a sore spot. Dolores tried to keep her smile steady, but something flickered across her face. Michael noticed immediately and leaned closer to the screen. "Mom, what happened?" "Nothing important," Dolores said, waving a hand. "Just a little rain that caught me off guard." Michael's voice, now gentle but firm, came through. "You've never been good at lying. What's going on?" Dolores sighed. "One thing about raising honest children is that they can always tell when you're not being truthful. It's silly, really," she began. "I tried to go to that luxury store Bollier to buy myself a birthday present, but the doorman wouldn't let me in. I didn't look rich enough for their taste." She forced a laugh. Michael's expression changed. His easy smile disappeared, replaced by something calmer and more intense. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. Dolores hadn't wanted to make a fuss, but she found herself telling Michael everything. Vincent's smug face, how he let others pass while blocking her path, the lie about a private event, the suggestion that she try the tourist shops instead. "I felt like I was 30 again," Dolores admitted, a single mother with worn-out shoes and 3 hungry kids, being judged by everyone. She shook her head. "Isn't it ridiculous? After all this time?" Michael was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was controlled in a way Dolores recognized from his childhood, the calm before a storm of determination. "What was the store's name again?" he asked. "Bollier, on Avenue Montaigne." "But Michael, please don't." "And the doorman's name?" Michael pressed. "Vincent. I think that's what his tag said. But, sweetheart, it's really not worth worrying about these things." Michael's eyes had that distant look, the one that meant his mind was already racing ahead, making plans. Dolores had seen that look before when he announced he was going to start his basketball career, and again when he decided to invest in businesses. "Michael," she said firmly, "promise me you won't do anything dramatic." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I promise I won't do anything to embarrass my mother." That wasn't exactly the promise she had asked for, But Dolores knew her son well enough to recognize it was the best she would get for now. Michael changed the subject. "Tell me about that lunch you had. Did you try the crème brûlée?" They talked for another 15 minutes about lighter things. Food. Michael's upcoming meetings. By the time they said goodbye, Michael said, "Happy birthday, Mom." "I love you," Dolores replied. "I love you too, sweetheart. Don't work too late." After they hung up, Dolores set the phone back on the nightstand. She felt lighter after sharing her story, but also worried that the look in Michael's eyes meant he was already making plans in his mind. Dolores went to the small hotel closet and pulled out a worn shoebox she always traveled with. Inside were photographs of Michael and his siblings as children standing beside her as she worked multiple jobs to put food on the table. One picture showed young Michael, maybe 10 years old, standing protectively beside her after a landlord yelled at them for being late on rent. Even then, her son had the same look in his eyes, as if mentally designing a world where his mother would never be treated that way again. "What are you planning now, my boy?" Dolores whispered to the photograph before placing it back in the box and climbing into bed. Tomorrow would be another day in Chicago, visiting museums, eating delicious food, and forgetting about Bollier and Vincent. Whatever Michael was thinking, she'd deal with it later. As sleep took over, Dolores's last thought was about closed and open doors, and how sometimes the most important doors were the ones you had to build. The next morning, Michael arrived at his office earlier than usual. His assistant, Theo, was surprised to see him at 5:30 a.m. "You're here early," Theo said, handing Michael his usual morning coffee. "No," Michael responded, taking the coffee but not drinking it. I need you to find out everything you can about a luxury store in Paris called Bollier." Theo raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. After working for Michael for 3 years, he knew when his boss had that special focused and determined look, the kind that was a little intimidating. "Already typing up the notes?" "Theo?" Michael said. Theo gathered most of the information. He knocked on Michael's office door with an armful of printed reports. "Bollier. Bollier is owned by a French company called Lux Heritage," Theo explained. "They've been in business for over 100 years. The building on Avenue Montaigne is one of their flagship locations, but they don't own it. It's managed by a real estate firm based in Monaco." Michael nodded, scanning the papers. "Call them. Tell them I want to make an offer for the building." "The whole building?" Theo asked. "Yes, but also for 10 years, Michael said. After several calls, Theo asked, "Are you sure about this, Michael? That's a lot of money for a personal matter." Michael leaned back in his chair. "You know what my mom did when I was 12 and some kids at school were bullying me? She marched into the principal's office and refused to leave until they fixed the problem." "I didn't know she worked 5 jobs to feed us," Theo said. 5 jobs, and she never complained." Michael's voice was quiet but intense. "So yes, I'm sure." Theo nodded and left to make more calls. Meanwhile, in Paris, Zara arrived at Bollier for her morning shift. As soon as she stepped through the employee entrance, she felt something was different. Groups of staff huddled together whispering. The usual morning music wasn't playing. "What's going on?" Zara asked Philippe, one of the security guards. "No one knows for sure," Philippe responded, looking uneasy. "But Madame Dupont has been locked in her office since she got a call an hour ago. She doesn't look happy." The store manager, Madame Dupont, stood up from her desk. "Attention, please," she said, clapping her hands. The staff quickly gathered. "I just received some unexpected news. The building that houses our store has been sold." Sighs and whispers spread through the group. "Sold?" Marcel, from the jewelry department, asked. "Yes," Madame Dupont replied. "But I was assured that we can continue with normal operations for now." Vincent, who had just arrived for his shift, stepped closer. "It's probably just an interested buyer." He was trying to stay calm, but he knew the situation was more complicated than it seemed. For now, no one knew that Michael Jordan was behind the purchase of the building. But the whispers continued. Dolores made her way to the scarf display, thinking about the black-haired woman from yesterday. Something about it didn't seem like a coincidence. By lunchtime, more rumors were flying. Marcel claimed he had heard that the new owner was a Russian billionaire. Someone else said it was a Chinese investment firm. The most dramatic rumor came from the cosmetics department. Apparently, the building had been bought by a rival luxury brand planning to kick Bollier out. Vincent seemed to be the only one unconcerned about Bollier being here 100 years, he told anyone willing to listen. We are an institution. No one would dare change anything." Zara wasn't so sure. As she carefully arranged silk scarves worth thousands of dollars each, she thought of all the people she had seen Vincent turn away because they didn't look right. The black-haired woman from yesterday wasn't the first, just the only one. What bothered Zara most was that, what if? She started whispering to herself. She stopped. It was a crazy thought. By closing time, Madame Dupin gathered the staff again, her face pale. "I have received more information," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "The store, not just the building but Boulier itself, has been sold. The new owner will visit in 3 days to announce changes." This time even Vincent looked worried as Zara walked home that night. She wondered what would happen next. She needed this job. But part of her couldn't help but hope that whoever bought Boulier would bring some changes. Maybe ones that would make her feel less ashamed when she put on the uniform every morning. Little did she know how big those changes would be. As Paris buzzed with rumors about Boulier's mysterious new owner, Dolores Jordan sat in a sunlit cafe near the Eiffel Tower. She stirred her coffee slowly, lost in the memories that yesterday's rejection had awakened. Her mind drifted back to South Carolina nearly 50 years earlier. She could almost feel the warm dust beneath her feet and hear the laughter of her 3 young children, Kimball, Tuska, and, of course, Michael. Back then, she was young and beautiful, but beauty didn't fill empty stomachs. After her difficult divorce, Dolores found herself alone, with 3 children and very little money. The landlord had told her on a rainy afternoon that her rent was overdue again. She stood at the door of Dolores's tiny apartment, looking at her as if she were something unpleasant stuck to her shoe. 7-year-old Michael had appeared beside her, his small hand slipping into hers. "My mother works harder than anyone," he had said, his voice firm despite his age. "She'll pay you next week." The landlord didn't laugh. "Big words from a little man," she said before walking away. That night, after putting her children to bed, Dolores cried quietly in the kitchen, but tears didn't pay the bills. The next day, she took on her 5th job, working weekends at a bakery that opened at 4 a.m. "Mom, why do you have to work so many jobs?" Tuska asked one night as Dolores limped home, her feet blistered from standing all day. "Because that's what mothers do," she replied simply. "We find a way." And somehow, she did. She put food on the table and kept a roof over their heads. She went back to school to become a nutritionist, took modeling jobs when they came, and never gave up. There had been many closed doors along the way. The bank that wouldn't give her a loan because single mothers were high risk. The landlords who wouldn't rent to her. The schools that looked down on her children because their clothes were second-hand. But Dolores remembered one particular day very clearly. 10-year-old Michael had come home from school with a black eye. "What happened?" she gasped softly, pressing a cold cloth to his face. "Some boys said we were poor," Michael murmured. "They said you weren't good enough because you couldn't even buy us new shoes." Dolores's heart broke, but she didn't let him see her pain. Instead, she sat him down at their wobbly kitchen table. "Look at me, Michael," she said. "Being poor doesn't make us less than anyone else. What matters is who we are, how hard we work, and how we treat others." "But they have everything," Michael argued, "and they still treat people badly. They haven't learned." An important life lesson, Dolores told him. True worth isn't about what you own. It's about how you make others feel. Young Michael thought about that for a long time. Then he looked at her with those intense eyes that seemed to see far beyond her words. "When I grow up," he promised, "I'll make sure no one ever looks down on you again, and I'll remember to make people feel good, not bad." Dolores smiled, unaware of just how seriously her son would take that childhood promise. Over the years, Dolores's life improved. Her hard work paid off. Her practice as a nutritionist took off. Her modeling career resurged at 60, an unprecedented feat in the fashion world. And her children, especially Michael, achieved success beyond anything she could have ever imagined. But through it all, Dolores remained the same practical and hard-working woman who had raised 3 children on her own. She never forgot what it felt like to be judged by appearances or rejected because she didn't seem important enough. "More coffee, madam?" the cafe waiter in Paris asked, pulling Dolores back to the present. "No, thank you," she replied with a smile. Just the check, please." As she paid her bill, Dolores thought about her video call with Michael the night before. She recognized that look in his eyes, the one that meant he was planning something. It was the same look he had when he announced he was starting a basketball company, because the sport had grown too commercialized. "Oh, Michael," she murmured to herself, "whatever you're planning, please don't make a scene." Dolores gathered her things and stepped out into the Parisian sunlight. She decided to leave thoughts of Beaulieu and rude doormen behind. She was in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and she wouldn't let one unpleasant experience ruin her trip. As she walked, Dolores' phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Having a good day, Mom? Anything special planned?" The message seemed innocent enough, but Dolores knew her son well. The casual question was his way of checking where she would be in the coming days. "Just wandering around," she replied. "Why do you ask?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, there was. "No reason. Just enjoy Paris." She could smile, she said, shaking her head. Whatever Michael was up to, she wouldn't find out by asking directly. That wasn't how her eldest son operated. When Michael had a plan, he kept it close until he was ready to reveal it. She put her phone back in her bag and continued her walk. Paris was far too beautiful to waste time worrying about whatever wheels Michael had set in motion. Back at the hotel that night, Dolores looked through old photos on her tablet. Pictures of her children growing up, the tiny apartments they shared, the graduations and achievements they celebrated together. There was young Michael, determined even as a child. There was Larry, always kind and supportive. And James, creative and strong. Dolores whispered to the images of her younger self and her little boys. We really did it. She had no idea that very soon her son would open a door that would change not only her life, but the lives of many others. And it would all start with an invitation that would arrive in the morning. 3 days after the incident in Beaulieu, Dolores was enjoying a late breakfast in her hotel room when a knock sounded at her door. A hotel staff member stood in the hallway, holding a cream-colored envelope on a silver tray. "Delivery for Madame Jordan," the young man said with a slight bow. "Thank you," Dolores replied, confused as she hadn't ordered anything. Back in her room, she examined the envelope. It was heavy, made of fine paper, with her name written in golden ink. No return address. She carefully opened it. Inside was a card engraved in gold lettering. "You are cordially invited to a special event at Beaulieu Avenue this evening at 7 p.m. Formal attire requested." Dolores stared at the invitation. Beaulieu? The very store that had turned her away? This had to be Michael's doing. But how had he arranged this so quickly? And what exactly was he planning? She picked up her phone to call him, but then paused. If Michael had gone through all this trouble, maybe she should just go along with whatever surprise he had planned. "Oh, Michael," she sighed, placing the invitation on her nightstand. "I hope you haven't done anything too dramatic." Dolores opened her closet to see what she could wear. Among her travel clothes hanging neatly was an elegant black dress. Simple yet classic. She had brought it just in case, never really expecting to need it. Well, she said to herself, I guess I'll be going back to Beaulieu after all. In Paris, Zara arrived at Beaulieu and found the store closed to the public with a sign on the door. Closed for special event. Inside, the staff was rushing around, preparing for something big. Everyone gathered around Madame Dupont, who looked stressed, her usually impeccable hair slightly out of place. Today is extremely important. The new owner will be here tonight, she said. Do we know who it is? Marcel asked. Madame Dupont admitted. No, but whoever it is has invited Paris's elite to attend tonight's event. Famous designers, celebrities, business leaders, all of them have confirmed their presence. That seems unusual, Philippe said skeptically. Everything about this situation is unusual, Madame Dupont replied. Just 3 days ago, this store belonged to Lux Heritage. Now it belongs to someone else. So please, everyone, be on your absolute best behavior tonight. She handed out assignments. Marcel would oversee the jewelry displays. The clothing department would prepare the finest pieces. Zara would arrange special decorations near the entrance. And Vincent the doorman would greet the guests with exceptional hospitality. Zara found herself rolling her eyes. Vincent's idea of a warm welcome depended entirely on how expensive a guest's attire looked. Throughout the day, The team transformed Boulier. Fresh flowers arrived in trucks from suppliers. Stations were set up for champagne and fine foods, and a red carpet was rolled out from the street to the door. "It's like we're preparing for royalty," Marcel whispered to Zara as they worked side by side. "Who do you think bought us?" "I have no idea," Zara replied. "But I hope whoever it is cares about more than just money." Marcel chuckled. "In the luxury business? Don't hold your breath." By late afternoon, everything was ready. The staff was sent home to change into their formal uniforms. Black suits for the men, black dresses for the women. When Zara returned at 6 o'clock, she barely recognized Boulier. The store shimmered with thousands of tiny lights. A small orchestra played in the corner, and everything was glowing. "Madame Dupont," she heard. "The guests will arrive soon. You should add the finishing touches to your outfit." The black dress fit her perfectly. Her hair was neatly styled. She wore pearl earrings, a gift from her children on her 81st birthday. "Whatever you're planning, Michael," she said to her reflection, "I hope it's worth it." Outside Boulier, the line of limousines began to arrive. Vincent stood at his post near the door, chest puffed with importance. Camera flashes going off as famous faces emerged from expensive cars. "Welcome to Boulier," Vincent said more than once, bowing to each distinguished guest. Inside, Zara watched the crowd grow. Movie stars, fashion designers, business tycoons, all wondering what the big announcement would be. At 6:55 p.m., Dolores's taxi pulled up to Boulier. She took a deep breath before stepping out onto the red carpet, the flashing cameras making her feel out of place. But she held her head high. Vincent didn't recognize her as she approached, seeing only an older woman dressed in simple but elegant attire. "Look at that black dress. Welcome to Boulier, madame," he said with his most charming smile, bowing deeply. "Thank you." "You may," she replied, looking him straight in the eyes. "How nice to be welcomed this time." Vincent's smile faltered slightly, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. But before he could realize where he had seen her before, Dolores Jordan stepped past him into the store. Inside Boulier, the space was packed with Paris's elite. Waiters moved through the crowd with champagne as the orchestra played softly. Everyone spoke in excited whispers, wondering what was about to happen. Zara spotted Dolores as she entered. Their eyes met briefly, and Zara offered a small, apologetic smile. Dolores nodded in return, fully understanding. At 7 p.m., the lights dimmed slightly. The orchestra stopped playing, and silence fell over the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice announced through hidden speakers, "please direct your attention to the grand staircase for a special announcement from the new owner of Boulier." All eyes turned to the imposing staircase at the center of the store. The spotlights focused there, briefly illuminating the empty steps. Then a figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Madame Dupont gasped at the sight of Vincent. Her mouth fell open. Zara's eyes widened in shock, and Dolores Jordan whispered, "Oh, Michael, what have you done?" Michael Jordan stood at the top of the grand staircase, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. The spotlight made his presence even more imposing while the crowd below fell silent, a mix of surprise and curiosity on their faces. "He's the new owner," Marcel whispered to Zara. "Yes," Zara confirmed in a barely audible voice, "he's the new owner." Vincent stood frozen near the door, his face pale. He suddenly remembered where he had seen the elegant silver-haired woman before. 3 days ago he had sent her away. Dolores Jordan, mother of the man who was now the owner of Boulier. Michael didn't speak immediately. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found his mother. Their gazes locked, and a small smile passed between them. Madame Dupont looked like she might faint. She had expected a wealthy buyer, of course, perhaps a fashion conglomerate or an investment group, but Michael Jordan, the basketball legend and sneaker billionaire? What did he want with a luxury store in Paris? The crowd began to murmur. Phones appeared as people tried to discreetly take photos. Fashion designers nudged one another, wondering what this meant for their products. Boulier had finally changed hands. Michael began to descend the stairs, each step deliberate and unhurried. When he reached the bottom, he accepted a glass of champagne from a waiter but didn't drink. "Good evening," he said, his voice carrying easily through the store. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice." The crowd murmured polite responses, but everyone seemed a bit nervous, unsure of what was going on. I know you're all wondering why I invited you here, Michael continued. Why would someone who builds great careers in sports and the footwear market be interested in a luxury store in Paris? A few people laughed, but most remained silent, waiting for the answer, which was bound to be both simple and complicated. But before I explain, I'd like to invite someone very special to join me. Mom, please come up here. All eyes turned to Dolores. She looked surprised but gracefully moved through the crowd. As she passed Vincent, she gave him a small nod. The doorman looked at her shoes, unable to meet her eyes. When Dolores reached her son's side, Michael took her hand and gently squeezed it. For those who don't know, this is my mother, Dolores Jordan, he said proudly, a nutritionist and the strongest person I know. The crowd clapped politely. Many recognized Dolores from her work as a model, her striking silver hair being her signature. 3 days ago, Michael continued, my mom visited Beaulieu during a holiday in Paris. It was her 81st birthday, and she wanted to buy something special for herself. Dolores tried to stop him with a soft touch on his arm, but Michael lightly shook his head. He was determined to tell the story. She was turned away at the door, he said, not because the store was closed, not because they didn't have what she wanted, but because in her travel clothes, she didn't look like someone who belonged in a luxury store. A murmur spread through the room, and the crowd's eyes turned to Vincent, who seemed to be trying to become invisible against the wall. I didn't buy Beaulieu just because my mom was treated poorly, Michael clarified. A rude employee doesn't define a business, but it made me think about what luxury really means and what it should mean. Madame Dupont stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment. Mr. Jordan, please allow me to apologize, she said. Michael raised his hand. No apologies needed, Madame Dupont. This isn't about punishment. It's about possibility. The tension in the room shifted slightly. Curiosity replaced anxiety as the crowd leaned in to hear more. When I was a child, Michael continued, my mom worked 5 jobs to support our family. 5 jobs, but there were places she couldn't go. Doors that wouldn't open for her simply because she didn't look rich enough. Dolores squeezed her son's hand, visibly moved by his words. Today that changes, Michael declared. Not just for my mom, but for everyone who's ever felt judged by their appearance rather than their character. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. Zara felt her heartbeat quicken. Something important was happening, something beyond just a business transaction. In the coming weeks, Beaulieu will undergo a transformation, Michael announced. The store will remain a luxury destination, but with a new definition of what luxury means. True luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about craftsmanship and exceptional experience available to those who value it. Some of the designers in the crowd exchanged nervous glances. If he said that Beaulieu would start selling cheaper items. Don't worry, Michael said, sensing their concern. We haven't compromised on quality. The prices won't change. But who pays those prices now? Well, all the details will come tomorrow, he promised. For tonight, please enjoy the champagne, the music, and the company. As if on cue, the orchestra began to play again. Waiters circulated with fresh champagne, and slowly the crowd began to mingle once more. But the buzz was different now. It was excited, curious, a bit restless. Michael guided his mother away from the spotlight to a quiet corner. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you, he said quietly. Dolores didn't reassure him, although her cheeks were rosy. But Michael buying an entire store isn't a little extreme? He smiled. The same determined smile she had known since he was a boy. When have I ever done anything that wasn't extreme? He replied. Zara watched the mother and son talking quietly. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see the affection between them. Whatever Michael Jordan was planning for Beaulieu, it wasn't just a business decision. Vincent had disappeared from his post. Through the door, Madame Dupont was surrounded by curious guests asking questions she couldn't answer. All over Beaulieu, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. Something was changing. The door was opening, but no one yet knew what awaited on the other side. The next morning, Beaulieu remained closed to regular customers. Instead, a team of people with clipboards and measuring tapes filled the store, examining every inch of the space. They took photos, made notes, and had intense discussions in the corners. Madame Dupont called an emergency meeting in the back room. Everyone was there, salespeople, security, cleaning staff, and yes, Vincent too. He sat at the back, unusually quiet. "I know you all have questions," began Madame Dupont, her voice tense. "So do I." Mr. Jordan requested that the entire team be here at 10 o'clock for an announcement. "Are we getting fired?" someone nervously asked. "I don't know," Madame Dupont admitted. "But Mr. Jordan assured me last night that his plans involve the current team. That's all I can say." Zara looked at Vincent, who looked at the floor. For the first time, his usual confidence was nowhere to be found. Exactly at 10 o'clock, Michael entered the back room, followed by his assistant Theo, who was carrying a sleek tablet. The team members straightened in their chairs, eyes wide. "Good morning," Michael said. "Thank you for coming. I know change can be unsettling, so I want to explain exactly what's happening." He paused, looking at each person in the room. When his eyes landed on Vincent, they lingered for a moment before moving on. "Bullier has a proud history," Michael continued. "For over 100 years, it has represented luxury, quality, and exclusivity. I don't intend to change the first two, but the third, that's going to be different." Murmurs spread around the room, and Madame Dupont's brow furrowed. "Let me tell you a story," Michael said, leaning against a table at the front of the room. "When I was 12, my mom saved for months to buy a new dress. Not a luxury dress, just something that wasn't secondhand. She went to a busy department store to make her purchase, but the saleswoman ignored her, helping better-dressed customers instead. The team shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My mom ended up leaving without buying anything," Michael continued. "When she got home, she tried to hide that she was upset, but I saw her wipe away tears when she thought no one was looking." The room was completely silent now. Even Madame Dupont seemed moved by this. "That day, I promised myself that when I grew up, I would make sure my mom never felt that way again," Michael said. "I have businesses, launched rockets, and made electric cars popular, but I've never forgotten that promise." Theo stepped forward and handed the tablet to Michael. "Today I'm announcing the launch of Project Dolores, named after my mother," Michael said, his voice stronger now. "Starting next month, Bullier will become the first luxury brand with a conscience." He tapped the tablet, and a large screen on the wall came to life, showing a new logo. Bullier's traditional emblem now surrounded by the words, "Quality, Craftsmanship, Community." "Here's how it will work," Michael explained. "Bullier will continue to sell the best products at their current prices. Nothing will be cheapened or compromised, but 20% of all profits will go to support single parents and their children. People like my mom who are trying to build a better life despite incredible odds." The team exchanged surprised looks. This was not what anyone had expected. "Additionally," Michael continued, 30% of our inventory will be reserved for what we call our community collection. These items will be sold at discounted prices, but not to just anyone. They will be available exclusively to people who serve their communities, like teachers, nurses, social workers, and others who give more than they receive." Madame Dupont raised her hand. "Provisional question, Mr. Jordan," she said. "How will we verify these good people?" Michael nodded. "We're creating a simple verification system. For those who qualify, they will receive a special Bullier card, granting them access to the community collection. The verification will happen online before they visit, so there will be no awkward questioning at the door." His eyes flicked toward Vincent, who seemed to be trying to sink into his chair. "But the most important change," Michael said, his voice becoming serious, "is about who feels welcome here. From now on, the doors of Bullier will be open to anyone who wishes to enter. The job of the team is to make sure every person feels equally valued, regardless of what they are wearing or how much they can afford." Zara felt a smile spread across her face. This was beyond anything she could have expected. "I understand this is a significant change," Michael acknowledged. "Some of you may not feel comfortable with the new direction. If that's the case, you will receive a generous severance package. There will be no hard feelings." He looked directly at Vincent now. "For those who want to be part of this transformation, you will find it rewarding in ways beyond your salary. You will be part of something that could change the entire luxury industry." The room buzzed with whispers and conversations. Some seemed excited, others uncertain. "One more thing," Michael added. "On the day we reopen, I want all employees to experience what it feels like to be welcomed. Judging by your appearance on opening day, All of you will shop at Boulier while wearing simple clothes, ones that typically might get a second glance from the luxury store employees. You will receive a budget to make a purchase and see firsthand what it feels like when you're welcome despite not appearing to be. Several team members nodded thoughtfully. Vincent looked down at his hands. I'll be in Paris next week to oversee the initial changes, Michael concluded. My team will work with each of you to ensure a smooth transition. Thank you for your attention. As Michael turned to leave, Madame Dupont stepped forward. Jordan, if I may ask, why not build a new store with these principles? Why Boulier specifically? Michael smiled faintly. Because transformation is more powerful than creation. By changing Boulier, we send a stronger message than starting something new. After the meeting, the team broke into small groups, discussing the announcement. Some were excited, others nervous. Vincent sat alone, his expression unreadable. Zara found herself standing near the assistant, Theo. Michael, has he always been like this? She asked quietly, nodding toward Michael, who was now examining the store layout with the architects. Theo smiled. When he believes something needs to change, he doesn't wait for others to do it, even if it costs millions to buy a luxury store just to make a point. Especially, Zara asked. For him, it's never just about making a point, Theo replied. It's about making a difference. Across the room, Dolores Jordan quietly entered through a side door. She watched her son with a mixture of pride and amazement. The little boy who once promised to protect her had grown into a man who kept his promises in ways bigger and bolder than she could have ever imagined. Michael noticed his mother and walked over to her, leaving the architects with their plans. What do you think? He asked, gesturing around the store. I think you're as subtle as a rocket launch, Dolores replied with a small smile. But I'm proud of you, Michael, not just for standing up for me, but for turning this into something bigger. Michael smiled. I learned from the best. You never did anything halfway. The following week, Boulier underwent a remarkable transformation. The physical changes were minimal. The store's sleek design remained virtually untouched. But the scenes? Everything was changing. Madame Dupont called an emergency meeting with the top designers whose products were sold at Boulier. They gathered in the store's private showroom, nervous about what Michael's changes might mean for their brands. I assure you, Madame Dupont said, the quality and exclusivity of your products will not be compromised. But if anyone can enter now, a famous handbag designer objected. How does exclusivity? Allow me to explain, Michael said, entering the room with Theo. The designers fell silent. Some impressed, others skeptical about whether their products would remain exclusive due to quality and price. Michael told them, we are not changing what we offer. What we are changing is who gets to see it up close. He pulled up slides on a screen showing the new store layout. The main floor remains unchanged, with your luxury items displayed in the most beautiful way as always. But we are adding a new section called Community Collection. The designers leaned forward, curious despite themselves. Each of you will be invited, Michael explained. No need to create special pieces for this collection. They will be sold at a lower price, but only to verified community service workers. The Boulier name will cover the difference between your regular wholesale price and the reduced retail price, so you won't lose money. The famous shoe designer raised her hand. And what do we gain by participating? Good publicity, Michael answered honestly, but also the chance to see your designs being worn by people who normally couldn't afford them. Imagine a kindergarten teacher wearing your shoes, or a firefighter giving your handbag to his wife as a birthday gift. The room fell silent as the designers considered this. Many of you came from humble beginnings, Michael reminded them. Before you were famous, someone gave you a chance. This is your opportunity to do the same for others. After the meeting, several designers approached Michael, eager to participate. By the end of the day, more than half had already signed up to create special pieces for the community collection. News of Boulier's transformation spread quickly through Paris and soon across the world. The story of Michael buying the store because his mother was rejected made headlines. Some praised the change as revolutionary, while others criticized it as a publicity stunt. Fashion magazines debated whether luxury could truly be inclusive. Business magazines analyzed whether the model could be profitable. Through it all, Michael continued working with the Boulier team, teaching them his vision. Dolores, his mother, visited the store daily, offering suggestions based on her years of experience and feeling both included and excluded in various spaces. Vincent surprised everyone by not quitting. Instead, he requested a private meeting with Michael. "I was wrong to judge your mother," Vincent admitted, his usual confidence replaced by genuine remorse. "I've been doing this for years, deciding who belongs based on appearance. I'd like to change, if you give me the chance." Michael studied him carefully. "Everyone deserves a second chance," he said finally. "But it won't be easy for you." "I understand," Vincent replied. "I'm ready to learn." A week before the grand reopening, Michael gathered the team again. This time he brought some special guests. Single parents from Paris who would be the first beneficiaries of Michael's project. Sarah, a mother of two who worked as a hospital janitor, spoke tearfully, sharing what the support would mean for her family. "My daughter needs special shoes for a foot condition," she explained. "Now she will have them." Marcus, a father raising 3 boys on his own, described how the program would help him pay for his children's school and supplies. "They won't have to feel different from the other kids anymore," he said. The team listened with tears in their eyes. The abstract idea of helping single parents became real as they heard these stories. Even Vincent seemed deeply moved. Zara took on a new role as head of the Dignity Committee, a team responsible for ensuring everyone who entered Beaulieu was treated with respect. She took her job seriously, developing training programs and monitoring systems. "The real test will be how we treat someone who comes in just to look, not to buy," she told her team. "That's when our commitment to dignity matters most." 3 days before the reopening, a training session was held. Team members took turns role-playing clients in various scenarios: the regular, the wealthy, the uncertain, the first-timer, and the community worker using their special access. Others practiced their responses, learning to treat each person with equal respect. Vincent struggled. More years of habit adjustments were hard to break, but to everyone's surprise, he worked harder than anyone, determined to change. "I spent my career keeping people out," he admitted during a training session. "Now I need to learn how to welcome people." On the eve of the big reopening, Dolores found Michael in the empty store late at night. He was standing alone, looking at the new sign above the entrance, Beaulieu. "Feeling nervous?" she asked, joining him. "A little," he admitted. "This isn't like launching a rocket. If a rocket fails, we build a better one. But changing how people think about luxury, about who deserves good things, is harder." Dolores took his hand. "You've already succeeded, Michael. Whether this works financially or not, you've made people talk about dignity and exclusion. You forced the whole industry to look at itself in the mirror." Michael squeezed her hand. "I just keep thinking about how that salesman made you feel all those years ago, and how Vincent made you feel last week. No one should feel less worthy because of what they're wearing." "The store looks beautiful," Dolores said, changing the subject. "I can't believe the big reopening is tomorrow. Are you ready to cut the ribbon?" "As the inspiration for all this, you should do the honors," Michael replied. "I'll just stand by your side," Dolores said. When they left the store, they didn't know yet, but in Paris, and soon all over the world, the idea of what luxury meant was already beginning to change. And it all started with a closed door and the quiet dignity of a mother. On the morning of Beaulieu's grand reopening, the sun unexpectedly shone after days of rain. It even seemed like the weather in Paris wanted to celebrate the occasion. Before the public ceremony, which Michael had scheduled, he had one last meeting with his team. They all gathered in the main showroom, dressed in their elegant Beaulieu uniforms. The anticipation in the room was almost electric. "Today marks a new beginning," Michael began to tell them. "But before we open those doors, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about shaming anyone for past mistakes." He paused, his eyes moving around the room until they landed on Vincent, who stood straighter under his gaze. "We all judge others sometimes. It's human nature. What matters is recognizing and changing." Michael Jordan's voice was firm but not rude when he said, "There must be consequences when our judgments hurt others." The room grew quiet until Madame Dupont seemed nervous. "From today on, Beaulieu has a new policy," Michael continued. "Any employee who judges customers by their appearance, who makes someone feel unwanted based on what they're wearing or how much they can spend, will face a consequence." Vincent swallowed hard. But it won't be termination, Michael surprised them by saying. The employee would spend a month working with homeless communities before they can return to Beaulieu. Whispers spread among the team. This was different from any workplace policy they had ever heard of. The goal is not punishment, Michael explained. It's understanding. When you serve people who have nothing, you learn to see beyond appearances. You learn that dignity matters more than designer labels. Madame Dupont raised her hand. Mr. Jordan, how will we know when someone has judged a customer? Michael smiled slightly. Good question. Sometimes it's obvious, like turning someone away at the door, for example. But often it's subtle. Following someone dressed casually too closely, ignoring them while helping better-dressed customers. He gestured to Zara. That's why the Dignity Committee will review customer feedback and observe interactions. But most importantly, I'm counting on all of you to hold each other accountable. Zara stepped forward, looking nervous but determined. I think we should start by acknowledging what we've seen in the past, she said. I've worked here for 2 years, and I've seen customers being judged every day. The team shifted uncomfortably, including Zara. She continued, her voice growing stronger. When Mrs. Jordan was rejected last week, I saw it happen and said nothing. I was afraid of losing my job if I spoke up. Vincent looked at the floor. Several other team members nodded, having witnessed similar incidents. Thank you, Zara, Michael said. This kind of honesty is exactly what we need. He turned to the entire team. This isn't about finding faults. It's about building something better together. Zara will lead the Dignity Committee because she had the courage to speak up. Now, she didn't stay silent, so that's growth. Vincent finally stepped forward. His usual arrogance was replaced by something humbler. I was the one who turned Mrs. Jordan away, he admitted, his voice calm but clear, and she wasn't the first. I've been doing this for years, thinking I was protecting Beaulieu's image. I was wrong. A heavy silence fell over the room. I'd like to volunteer, Vincent continued, surprising everyone. I don't want to wait until I make another mistake. I want to learn now. Michael studied him for a moment and then nodded. Your first task will start next week. In the meantime, you'll be at the door today, welcoming everyone who comes to see our new Beaulieu. The team was dismissed to prepare for the opening, but Zara stayed behind with Michael Jordan. She hesitantly said, I've been wondering how you specifically came to buy Beaulieu. There are dozens of luxury stores in Paris. Michael smiled. I didn't know at first. When my mother told me what happened, I started researching luxury stores with a reputation for exclusivity. Then my team found online reviews, dozens of them mentioning being ignored or made to feel unwelcome at Beaulieu. He nodded toward Vincent. That doorman had a good reputation, but so did the store itself. And you saw an opportunity? Zara guessed. I saw a symbol, Michael corrected. Beaulieu represented the old way of thinking about luxury, as something that separates people. I wanted to turn it into something that connects people. Outside, a crowd gathered for the reopening ceremony. Journalists jostled for position. Fashion industry leaders stood next to curious Parisians. And at the front, a special section contained single parents, community workers, teachers, nurses, and firefighters who had been invited as guests of honor. At 10 o'clock, Theo guided Dolores to her position at the ribbon. Michael joined her, along with Madame Dupont, Zara, and at Michael's specific request, Vincent. Ready? Michael asked his mother quietly. Dolores looked at the crowd in the store and then at her son, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. But she smiled brightly. Ready, she replied. Behind them, through Beaulieu's glass doors, a new kind of luxury awaited. One that measured value not by appearance or wealth, but by the simple dignity every human being deserves. As Dolores raised the ceremonial scissors, she knew the door once closed to her was about to open to countless others. The golden scissors glistened in the sunlight as they cut the ribbon. Cameras clicked, and the crowd applauded. Vincent stepped forward and opened the door, bowing slightly as he gestured for Dolores to enter first. Welcome to Beaulieu, Mrs. Jordan, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. It's an honor to have you. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. The woman once rejected was now the first to enter. Behind her, Michael smiled at Vincent, acknowledging the moment. Videos of the ceremony were all over online media worldwide. The story spread. Michael Jordan buys luxury store that rejected his mother. The headlines multiplied: Revenge Billionaire or Retail Revolution. Inside Jordan's lab, his mother's project sparked a change in the luxury industry. His mother's humiliation triggered a shift in the fashion space, challenging snobbery with a surprising purchase. By nightfall, the story went viral. Dolores's project trended on social media, with people sharing their own stories of feeling judged or rejected. "I once saved for months to buy a good watch," wrote a teacher from Chicago. "The salesman ignored me until I mentioned my price range, and then suddenly, nothing was available, and took my hard-working mom to a fancy restaurant for her birthday," posted a nurse from Sydney. "They seated us in the kitchen because we didn't look right for the main dining room." Thousands of similar stories were shared on social media. It was no longer just about luxury stores. It was about dignity, respect, and who decides who belongs where. The next morning, Michael and Dolores appeared on a popular morning show via video link from Paris. Some critics called it a publicity stunt. "How do you respond to that?" the host asked. "They may be right," Michael shrugged. "If publicity helps get the message across that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, I'm okay with that," he added. "I've been poor and comfortable in my life. The difference in how people treat you is shocking." This project isn't about making luxury accessible. It's about making it accessible with dignity. Not everyone supported it. Some luxury brands threatened to pull their products from Bullier, worried that the new policies might strip the exclusivity from their image. "Let them," Michael told a concerned Madame Dupont. "For every brand that leaves, 5 more will want to join us when they see our sales numbers inside Bullier." The atmosphere was electric. Regular customers came out of curiosity, many bringing friends who had never dared to enter before. The community collection was surrounded by teachers, nurses, and other service workers using their special access cards. Vincent stood at his post at the door, but with a new approach. Michael Jordan greeted everyone with the same warm celebrity-to-tourist welcome. The change wasn't easy for him. At times his smile would stiffen when someone in overly casual clothes approached, but he caught himself more and more, reminding himself of his next service to the community. Dolores Jordan worked tirelessly with her Dignity Committee, observing interactions and gathering feedback. At the end of each day, she held brief training sessions, sharing examples of excellent and problematic interactions with customers. By the end of the first week, Bullier's sales had doubled. The publicity brought curious buyers, but it was the new atmosphere that kept them coming back. People who had never felt comfortable in luxury stores before found themselves returning, even if just to browse. Media coverage continued non-stop. Fashion magazines debated whether other luxury brands would follow Bullier's example. Business newspapers analyzed the financial impact, with morning shows sending reporters to interview customers entering and leaving the store. "I've passed by this place for 20 years, but I've never gone in," said an older woman to a reporter, proudly showing off the silk scarf she had bought. "This is the first time I felt that my work was valued enough to deserve something beautiful." As the second week began, Michael Jordan received calls from CEOs of other luxury retailers, quietly requesting meetings to discuss Dolores Jordan's project. Several wanted to implement similar programs in their stores. "This is happening faster than I expected," Michael said to Theo as they reviewed the latest numbers. "I thought we'd have to prove the concept for months before anyone else considered it." "You underestimate the power of good publicity," Theo replied. "No one wants to be on the wrong side of this." "Talk more. More about your mom is very convincing in those interviews," Michael laughed. She'd been waiting 81 years to tell those stories. No one could stop her now. By the end of the second week, Dolores Jordan's project had become a movement, and it all started because one woman was turned away at the door, and her son decided to do something about it. 3 months after the initial reopening, Bullier closed for 2 days for renovations. When it reopened, the transformation was complete. The store's sleek exterior remained virtually unchanged, but above the entrance was a new sign: Bullier. Quality, community. The craft space within the store had been carefully redesigned. The main floor still displayed the finest luxury items at their usual prices, but a new spiral staircase led to an airy second floor dedicated to the community collection, where teachers, nurses, firefighters, and other service workers could shop with their special access cards. The most revolutionary was the new workshop, a bright and welcoming space where local artisans from underserved communities could showcase their work alongside established designers. On the opening day of the second line, 2 lines formed outside the store, one for regular customers and the other for community cardholders. Paris had never seen anything like it. Fashion models conversed with kindergarten teachers, and wealthy businessmen stood next to paramedics, waiting with the same anticipation. Vincent, who had completed his month of service at a homeless shelter, stood at the door in his perfectly pressed uniform. The experience had changed him deeply. Working with people who had nothing forced him to confront his own prejudices. He greeted everyone with his genuine smile, regardless of how they looked. And inside Boulier, Zara led her team of dignity ambassadors, specially trained members to ensure everyone felt equally welcome. They wore distinctive silver pins so customers could easily identify them. "Our job is simple," Zara said to her team that morning. "Make sure everyone who walks through that door feels like they belong here." Exactly. At 10 o'clock, Dolores Jordan opened the doors. She had become the face of the project. Her silver hair and warm smile were now internationally recognized. She welcomed everyone, announcing to the crowd waiting outside, "Today, Boulier truly belongs to all of you." The first person to enter was Elena, a nursing student who had saved for months to buy something from the community collection. In her simple jeans and t-shirt, she would have been ignored, or worse, asked to leave. In the old Boulier, Vincent greeted her warmly. "Welcome to Boulier, mademoiselle. How can we assist you today?" Elena showed her community card with a mix of pride and nervousness. "I'd like to see the scarves, please." "Of course. Zara will be delighted to help you." Vincent gestured to Zara, who stepped forward with a genuine smile. As Zara guided Elena to the scarf display, she noticed the hesitation. "First time shopping at Boulier?" Zara gently asked. Elena nodded. "I never thought I could shop at a place like this. Even with the community discount, it's a big expense for me." "Then let's make sure you find something perfect," Zara reassured her. "Something that makes you feel special every time you wear it." Throughout the morning, similar scenes played out across the store. A firefighter brought his wife to pick out her first luxury handbag. An elderly teacher tried on silk gloves with childlike delight. A social worker who had spent decades helping others finally bought something just for herself. In the main floor of Boulier, the traditional wealthy clientele still shopped, but with a new awareness. Many had followed Dolores Jordan's project in the media and supported her mission. Some even spoke to the holders of community cards, finding class and wealth barriers temporarily lowered. During a quieter moment, Madame Dupont found Vincent organizing an exhibition near the entrance. "How was your month at the shelter?" she asked carefully. Vincent was silent for a moment. "Life had changed," he finally said. "I met a man there, Pierre, who used to be a bank executive, and lost everything in the financial crisis. Every day for 10 years, he passed by luxury stores, being ignored by people like me. He adjusted a silk scarf on a mannequin. Do you know what he told me? He said that being invisible was worse than being homeless. At least with the homeless, you expect to fight. But being treated like you don't exist breaks something inside of you." Madame Dupont's expression softened. "I never thought of it that way," said Vincent. "Now, neither did I," he admitted. "Not until I had to serve meals to the people." He stepped away from the door. That afternoon, the store was filled with a diverse mix of customers. Some spending thousands on haute couture, others carefully selecting a single precious item from the community collection. In the workshop, a young designer from a low-income neighborhood smiled as a famous actress bought one of her handmade bags. The girl's mother, who had worked as a cleaner all her life, wiped away tears from her eyes as she watched her daughter. "She has an extraordinary talent," the actress told her. "Thank you for supporting her dream." The news spread by CRWS, who interviewed the customers as they left the store. The story was no longer just about Michael Jordan's grand gesture. Now it was about the real impact on real people. "I worked as a nurse for 30 years, said an older woman to a reporter, proudly showing off the silk scarf she had bought. "This is the first time I felt that my work was valued enough to deserve something beautiful." As the evening approached, Michael arrived with Theo to see how the day had gone. He moved silently through the store, observing rather than drawing attention, and instead of asking about sales figures, he discreetly asked Madame Dupont, "Is it 30% higher than our best day under the old model?" She reported, unable to hide her astonishment. "And the community collection is completely sold out. We need to restock immediately." Michael nodded, satisfied but not surprised. He knew that when people felt they were part of something meaningful, they would pay the full price for that feeling. As the store prepared to close, Vincent approached Michael, somewhat nervous. "Mr. Jordan, I wanted to thank you," said Vincent, "not to keep my job, but for helping me become better at this. At being a better person, really." Michael shook his hand. "The real thank you goes to those shelter residents who taught you what I never could." After the last customer left, the team gathered for a tight meeting. Dolores joined them, having spent the day talking to customers and hearing their stories. "Today," she said to the tired but happy staff, "you did more than sell luxury goods. You restored people's dignity. Never underestimate how powerful that is." As the first journey of the new Bullier came to an end, no one, not even Michael, could have predicted how Dolores's project would end up being a success. 6 months after the transformation of Bullier, Dolores was sitting comfortably in a chair at Michael's apartment in Paris, scrolling through the news on her tablet, hardly believing what she saw. "Michael," she called, "did you see this? In Milan, they're launching their own version of Dolores's project next month." Michael looked up and smiled. "That's the 5th one this month." Added to the list. The list had grown impressively over the past 6 months since the reopening of Bullier. Luxury retailers around the world had started adopting similar models. Some genuinely embraced the philosophy behind Dolores's project, while others reluctantly followed, pushed by public pressure and changing customer expectations. "It's remarkable," said Dolores, shaking her head. "All because of a rude gesture, right?" "No," Michael replied, closing his laptop. "It's all because you had the dignity not to make a scene that day. If you had yelled at Vincent or demanded to see the manager, as I considered, it would have just been another entitled customer complaint." Dolores interrupted with a smile. "You walked out with your head held high? And that's what made me realize how often this happens to people who don't have a son who can buy the store." The effects of Dolores's project spread far beyond the luxury world. Retail schools started creating dignity committees to deal with bullying. Hospitals began training their teams to treat all patients with the same respect, regardless of their appearance or background. Even some government offices adopted the public service model. Dolores's project also became an unexpected fashion icon for women. More than 70 fashion magazines featured her on their covers, celebrating her silver hair and elegant simplicity. She received daily invitations to speak about dignity, respect, and second chances. "Look at this one," Dolores said, still scrolling through the news. "Vincent is being interviewed about his experience at the homeless shelter. Since he completed his month of service, he continues to volunteer there on his days off and has started a program teaching job interview skills to the residents, helping them prepare for opportunities. He was now training other luxury retail workers, teaching them how to welcome everyone equally." Who would have thought that Zara, promoted to community engagement director for all Bullier's expanding locations, would be a huge success? The original store was so successful that similar locations were opened in New York, Tokyo, and Dubai, all built based on Dolores's design model. The business world had adopted this model. Harvard Business School was developing a case study on the transformation, and the economic journals analyzed how community engagement had actually increased overall profits while creating brand loyalty. But the most significant for Michael were the letters that arrived. "Listen to this," he said, picking up a handwritten note from the pile on the coffee table. "My daughter has been a special education teacher for years. She spent everything on her students. Nothing for herself or her community. The card she bought, a beautiful scarf from Bullier, she wears every day and says it reminds her that her work is important." Michael nodded, moved. The simple story, these small moments of recognition and dignity, were exactly what Dolores's design was meant to create. "Look at this one," Dolores continued. "I used to be the woman who judged others by their clothes. After hearing your story, I realized I was no better than that doorman. I've changed how I treat people. Thank you for the wake-up call." Even Madame Dupont had written a thoughtful letter, admitting that she had allowed an atmosphere of exclusion to flourish at Bullier for years. Now she was leading workshops for other retail managers on how to create truly welcoming spaces. The most surprising thing was how Dolores's design even affected regular wealthy customers. Many shoppers reported feeling better about their purchases, knowing that part of what they spent supported single parents. Many voluntarily paid the full price, even when they qualified for community discounts, wanting to contribute rather than benefit. "We've created something beautiful," Dolores said, putting down the tablet. "Something that will last longer than both of us." Michael smiled. "Your mom and we are just getting started." Plans were underway to expand Dolores's design to other industries. Luxury hotels, high-end restaurants, and exclusive clubs were rethinking their approach to exclusivity and dignity. The design even inspired practical changes in retail design, replacing separate entrances and special sections used to segregate customers by wealth, with unified spaces where everyone entered through the same door and shopped side by side. Fashion schools had added courses on inclusive design and ethical luxury, and young designers were creating collections specifically for community programs, seeing it as good business and good ethics. As Michael and Dolores prepared to celebrate the 6-month mark of Dolores's project, they reflected on how a small moment of rejection had sparked such widespread change. "Ready to face the cameras again?" Michael asked as they headed for the door. "Always," Dolores replied with a smile. "But this time, I'm wearing Bollier." She adjusted her stylish scarf. The first item from the community collection, now a symbol of the movement she had inspired. Together, they walked out to share their story once again, knowing that each telling opened another door for someone who had once felt shut out. 1 year after Bollier's transformation, a special anniversary celebration was planned. The store's door was closed during the day, with only invited guests allowed. Former and current employees, community card holders who had been the first customers, and media representatives. They gathered in the beautifully decorated main hall. Dolores, elegant as always, wore a simple blue dress and was near the refreshment table talking to Zara, who now graciously coordinated training programs for committees worldwide. "I still can't believe how much has changed in just 1 year," Zara said, looking around at the diverse crowd. "Remember how everything used to be? Those invisible barriers that I only experienced once?" Zara continued. Dolores smiled. But that was enough. On the other side of the room, Vincent was showing a group of retail executives the entrance area, explaining how it had once been guarded like a fortress and was now seen as a portal. "The hardest part was unlearning decades of habits," he told them. "But now I can't imagine doing my job the old way." Madame Dupont, who had recently been promoted to oversee the international expansion of Dolores's project, was having a deep conversation with designers who had created special lines for the community collection. The atmosphere was warm and celebratory, but there was also an air of anticipation. Michael had promised a special announcement, something he called the final piece of Dolores's project. At 12 p.m. sharp, Michael climbed onto a small platform in the center of the room. The crowd quieted immediately. "Thank you all for coming today," he began. "A year ago, we embarked on an experiment. Many said it would fail, that luxury and inclusion couldn't coexist, that profit and purpose were opposing forces." He gestured around the room. "I think we've proven the opposite. Bollier's profits have doubled. The community collection sells out every month. And most importantly, thousands of people who never felt welcome in places like this now shop here with dignity." The crowd applauded. Several community cardholders nodded emphatically. "But there is something I haven't shared," Michael continued, his voice growing more serious. "Something more important about why this project was so personal to me." Dolores looked at her son with curiosity, even though she didn't know what was coming. "When I was 24, Michael began, I was just starting my first company. We barely had enough funding to keep the lights on. I worked 18 hours a day and lived on ramen noodles to save money." The room was completely silent now, everyone hanging on his words. "It was my mom's birthday," Michael continued, looking at Dolores. "Even though I barely had any money, I wanted to buy her something special, something that showed how much her sacrifices meant to me. As I grew up, Dolores's hand went to her heart, a stirring memory, something Michael had kept for months, setting aside a little bit from each ramen dinner. Finally, I had enough for a small but beautiful scarf from a luxury store in Chicago," Michael said. He paused, his eyes meeting Vincent's in the crowd. "I put on my only ill-fitting suit, which I bought secondhand for job interviews. I went into that store, nervous but excited, to finally give my mom something beautiful after all she had done for us." The crowd seemed to collectively hold its breath, sensing where the story was going. The doorman looked at me and without a word stepped in front of me and said, "The store is closed for stock today." Sighs spread through the room. Vincent's face turned pale, recognizing his own past behavior. "Through the window I could see customers shopping inside," Michael said, "but I was too ashamed to argue. I left, still holding the money I had saved for months." Dolores wiped a tear from her eye, having never heard the story before. "Before that day, I made two promises to myself," Michael continued. "First, that I would be successful, so completely that no one would ever reject me again. And second, when I made it, I would make sure my mom and everyone else was treated with dignity, no matter how they looked." He looked directly at his mother now. "When you called me from Paris, telling me about Vincent pushing you away in Beaulieu, it wasn't just about that moment. It was about a promise I made to myself almost 20 years ago." The room was silent, except for a few sniffles. "Dolores's project isn't just named after my mom," Michael explained. "It's the fulfillment of a promise I made because of her. A promise to create spaces where value isn't determined by appearance or wealth, but by the simple dignity every human being deserves." He stepped off the stage and walked over to Dolores, taking her hands. "I never bought you that scarf, but I hope this makes up for everything." He gestured to the store around them. "Now may I hug my mother?" Tears flowed freely. The crowd erupted into emotional applause, many wiping away their own tears. After a moment, Michael returned to the audience. "The last part of Dolores's project is this. We are establishing the Dignity Foundation, with an initial funding of $100 million. Its mission will be to identify spaces where people are judged by their appearance and not their character, and transform them, just like we transformed Beaulieu." The announcement was met with applause. "Because, as you see," Michael concluded, "this was never really about luxury or retail. It was about that universal human feeling of being judged, dismissed, or excluded based on your appearance or what you have. That's what we're really fighting against." When the formal program ended and guests mingled once again, Dolores and Michael walked together through the store, stopping to look at the original entrance of Beaulieu, where she had been rejected just a year earlier. "You never told me about that store in Chicago," Dolores said softly. "I was too ashamed," Michael admitted. "And later, it didn't seem important, but you never forgot." "Some doors stay closed in memory unless you find a way to open them yourself," Michael replied. They continued walking through Beaulieu, watching how people from all walks of life navigated and shopped, celebrities next to teachers, executives next to nurses, all experiencing the same respect and dignity. "You know what makes me happiest?" Dolores asked, squeezing her son's hand. "What?" Michael asked. "It's that the door we've opened isn't just for me or for people like me. It's for everyone who has ever felt they didn't belong." She smiled, and in that moment, mother and son knew that of all Michael's achievements, this might be the one that matters most. A door once closed, now open to all. Thank you for watching. I'm curious where you're watching from. Leave your location in the comments below. If this story about dignity, respect, and the power of standing up for others touched your heart, please hit the like button to help spread kindness to more viewers. Remember, sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can open doors that change the world. If you liked this video, leave a like, subscribe, and help us bring you more exciting stories involving celebrities. Here you will be updated every day on the world of celebrities. See you soon.